Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Geeks and Goblins. How is everybody out there in the world? How are you today? Utopian Revolt.
Great. I'm half asleep over here after having some nice ramen today, but feeling really good though. How about yourself, man?
I'm good, man. You've been like on the ramen run. Every time I've heard you like speak words on stream, it's been about like ramen for like the last like 3 streams, including this one.
Hey man, ramen's good. It's cheap, it's easy, and it's filling. At least for the initial 30 minutes, and then you're hungry again. But feeling good other than that, man. How about you, bro? How you been doing today? How you been doing after this little hiatus that we've gone on?
I've been good, man. I was stuck at my mother's house, dog sitting, cat sitting, and now I'm back in front of the camera, in front of the lights. Like I'm here. I'm scared of the streaming thing, man. I don't know how I did this. I took a week away, and I was like, oh my god, how have I been doing this for so long? It's crazy. But I'm back and I'm here. Very funny though. Your description of ramen sounds like exactly what everyone was saying about Morbius. Cheap, easy, and good for about 30 minutes. So I just think that's funny. I just thought that was very timely.
Can we get a limited edition Maruchan instant ramen like Morbius flavor or something like that?
Ooh, yes. It'll be like very unfulfilling, probably a little flavorless, and the pack will actually be about half full. So it'll be more akin to a bag of Lay's chips, I think,
Okay.
than it would be a ramen.
Okay. Hey, that's a collector's item though.
I agree. It's something like that. It's something. It's something. So, I would like to start this episode off by saying, I want everyone to take a look at I'm always so confused as to where to, like, point for things. I want everyone to take a look at the big red sign right here to the left of my face that says, spoiler warning. Sir, you were pointing in the wrong direction. Spoiler warning for Moon Knight and for Doctor Strange. I'm saying it again. Spoiler warning for Moon Knight and Doctor Strange. We are going full bore into these shows and movies today. And with that said, I suppose that's also a spoiler warning for Loki, WandaVision, Spider-Man No Way Home, the MCU as a whole. If you are caught by surprise on something here, you got the notification. It's in the title, and it's up here at the top. You have nothing to be surprised by.
Oh my god.
All
There's
right?
still gonna be some people at the end of the episode like, yo, what? I didn't even know that.
Of
Like,
course.
Come on. I was about to watch it on Tuesday,
Of course, we're going to be on the front page of sportskeeda.com. Amateur streamers spoil Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness 2 days after release. Like, I'm pardon, a day after release, technically. I can already see it. We're going to be canceled super, super hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I'm ready though. I'm ready. We'll go down together.
Absolutely. So, one last time before we do Moon Knight Episode 5. Spoiler warning! Run away now for Moon Knight's Episode 5 and 6, and for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. That is what we're here talking about today. Utopian Revolt, would you like to kick us off on Moon Knight Episode 5?
So I'm gonna start off the way that we've been starting off our last couple of Moon Knight episode reviews. I want to say that Moon Knight episode 5 is a full-blown 5 geeks out of 5. Arguably the best episode that we've gotten up until this point. It's just a perfect mix of action, emotions. It finally answers some questions that everybody's been like just craving an answer for, and I think it's crazy to see how we've seen a development from not just Mark as a character, but also Steven as a character, and seeing them grow together within these last couple episodes. And here we are, man. Like, what an episode! What an episode!
Absolutely, man. I've said it before. I now I get to say it on stream. Episode 5 of Moon Knight is my favorite episode of the whole series. If you know me personally and the things that I love in regards to like film and television, stuff like that, I am a sucker for character development. I am a sucker for good storytelling, and Moon Knight episode 5 is chock full of all these things. So many revelations, so many answers. Of course, and it left so many questions, but the answers were chef's kiss. Whoever wrote this episode, I gotta find this man's name because he deserves all the accolades. Did the MCU a service in giving us an MCU episode unlike anything we've really ever seen before.
It's definitely true. It delved much more into the mental health aspect of the show that we've already been praising it a lot for. You know, it went really deep into what makes Mark tick as a person. Where did Steven come from? Who is the real persona? It gave us answers to all those questions. And also, like, that damn fucking hippo. We know who that hippo is.
Tawaret. Her name is Tawaret.
The most important character of all time. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The best character across any bit of MCU media we have ever gotten. God bless Tawaret. We must protect her because she is baby. But she was also down with sending your boys to the Duat very, very quickly. She was not here for the fuck shit. She had a job to do, okay? She was adorable and she had a job to do, and she was very serious about it, man.
Right, you can't blame her for that. You know, she's just, she's getting paid her wage. She needs to make a living somehow. You know, she liked Mark, she liked Steven. She tried to help them out as much as she possibly could, giving them hints, giving them ideas of what they could do. She was trying her fucking best to help them get balanced. You know, so even though she was doing her job, she was looking out for our boys.
Now, speaking of getting balanced, just the heartbreak that is Mark Spector's life. You have to talk about it. It's just right there in your face. You have to talk about it. Seeing how his alter, that is Stephen Grant, as well as Jake Lockley, which we will get to later down the road, seeing how the alter came about and how the system really was developed. I tell you, I'm an emotional being anyway. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I'm a very emotional being, but I didn't expect to find myself swelling up a little bit with tears watching Mark go through what he went through.
See, man, I was watching an episode of Good Place last night, and there was at one point where Michael, one of the main characters, was talking about how the only emotions you really need in life is anger and confusion. And while watching this episode, that was literally me to a T. Anger and confusion. Not only did I get sad in those moments where you see where his life kind of just fell apart, but I found myself getting incredibly pissed off at how Mark's mother was kind of taking out her anguish and grief on him and what basically caused him to become. This episode was heartbreaking in every fucking fashion. It was crazy, man. It really was.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Instantly top 3 villains in Marvel history. Instantly, like, in the top 3. Like, talk about an origin story. Jokes aside, though, I mean, I guess you delve a little bit more into the psychology of what it's like to lose a child. And so often, I think, in media, which is why I find this refreshing, so often we see in media, in the occasion where somebody loses a child and they have a second child or so on and so forth, they lose the child, and we see kind of the complete inverse of what we saw here. They become more paternal. They love their children harder, situations like that, or they don't really seem too deeply affected by it. This is a situation that I've very seldom, if ever, have seen on the silver screen or the big screen, where a parent just completely shut down and that paternal instinct essentially died with their child. She was not here for Mark at all anymore. He was just the cause and feeling of her pain and her hate and her anguish, and it led her down a path of child abuse. And for specifically this conversation being an MCU Power Hour, for the MCU to go to that place, being one of the places that it's gone with Moon Knight that were unexpected, for seeing her go to that place, seeing them choose to do this, it was surprising and a dark way refreshing.
Yeah, honestly, it really was. I think we've kind of seen that throughout the entire show so far, not just in this aspect, but in many other aspects, where it's breaking the mold of what it means to be a property inside of the MCU. We're seeing things we've never seen before in terms of representation for people with DID, exploring asylums and just the psychology of broken people. Seeing, like you said, a mother lose her child and just completely not just shut down her paternal instincts, but become a fucking villain for her remaining son, basically turning him into a fucking killer. Seeing him about to be abused and then just kind of like take himself out of the situation and become Stephen Grant. This episode, the reason why I think you and I both rate it so highly is because of how it really like pulled on those heartstrings in a way that we've never really seen before in the MCU, or honestly we haven't really seen much of on TV period, especially in this golden age of streaming TV. It was very unique, a fresh breath of air, and I still feel enraged thinking about certain parts of this episode, like when Mark had a couple of birthdays where he was alone, or when his mom came all drunk, still blaming it on him years down the line. Jesus, man.
Yeah, it's a dark place for the MCU, and I think given the later portion of this conversation, I think it's a trend that hopefully we don't see go away. I think, definitely a sad story for Mark Spector, 100%. But from a storytelling aspect, it's refreshing. It's so refreshing to see the MCU really start to break that mold of what like their formula has been for the better part of the last decade and some. We've gotten so used to the Marvel formula, the haha with a little bit of action, we make light of some things here or there, big action sequences, big fights, and then, we move on. And Moon Knight does a great job of, like, circumventing that particular trope, those tropes and that formula very, very well. And I think this is one of the instances where I was not expecting them to go as comic book origin with his origins as they did. I thought we might have gotten a little bit of a different switch here, but even down to how he, meets Khonshu and becomes the Moon Knight is almost ripped out exactly from the comics.
So I started reading a collection of Moon Knight comics. I started with The Werewolf by Night, very much with the recommendations that you've given me, and it's very interesting seeing him from the very beginning. I haven't gotten to the point where I do see his origin, but that being said, like it honestly, this entire episode really kind of just gave you the idea of who not just Mark Spector is, who not just Stephen Grant is, but also who Moon Knight is, what that character is supposed to be, what that character means for just the grand world.
Yes, and just to be clear, his mother is not, well, the twist with his mother is not part of his original reason for why he has the alters, just to be clear. When I say his storyline, his origin, I'm referring to specifically when, Khonshu enters his life and he becomes the Moon Knight. I will leave his traumatic experience that creates the system for you to be found on your own. Moving on, though, with the rest of the episode, it was nice to finally see Steven be what he was created for, in a sense. Obviously, if you've seen the episode, I'm not going to say spoiler warning because it's right there up at the top. If you've seen the episode at this point, Steven sacrifices himself. Let's maybe call it unintentionally for all we know, but he does sacrifice himself so that Mark can live, and I do love to see that switch there in his mind where he says, well, hey, if you can do it, then I can do it, and he becomes that protector, at least in that instance, one last time for Mark. And I think there were so many things done right about this episode, and I don't believe I gave my rating for it before we started going. It's a solid 5 out of 5 goblins for me. I think that can be a given at this point. This had everything that a show like this should have, and of course, without saying, needless to say, a fantastic and flawless performance by Oscar Isaac again.
He killed it, man. He killed it. And within these last 2 episodes, we're about to get into episode 6 very soon, but just with this one episode, not many actors would be able to have a convincing relationship with himself. It was very interesting to see that dynamic play out through the beginning of the show to the end. It really is something special, man. I can't give him enough credit.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that leads us pretty solidly into episode 6, which, as you put it, I think you put it best. We went from arguably the best episode of the series to probably the I don't want to say worst, but as you said, worst episode of the series.
I mean, when I mentioned that, I wasn't trying to say that this was a bad episode by any means, because I still very much enjoyed a lot of it. I just think in terms of what we've gotten so far, like, in comparison, it is the worst episode that we've gotten, at least in my opinion. And I think you share that opinion as well. It was very rushed. It felt like the complete opposite of the Batman, for example, where that movie was very slow. It felt like this needed an extra hour an extra episode to wrap things up. Things were just moving at a blistering pace. There were points where Mia and I, while we were watching, we were like, what the fuck is even going on? Like, who did they just kill? Who just got knocked out? What is going on? So needless to say, my review score for episode 6 is 3.5 geeks out of 5 geeks.
I think I may have to mirror your score there as well. Slightly. I will give it a 3.5 goblins out of 5 goblins. Partly because of the end credit scene. It does so much to redeem that episode, but not enough to redeem that episode, if that makes sense. I remember finding out after episode 5 that episode 6 was going to be 42 minutes long, and I knew going from that point that we were going to get a breakneck speed episode, and I could only hope that it was going to work, and unfortunately I think it missed the mark on, no pun intended, it missed the mark on a lot of levels. Primarily just, wrapping up that initial season 1 story. There's so many plot holes in not even I don't even necessarily want to call them plot holes, but there's so many areas where you're left wondering, like, well, how the fuck does that even make sense? Still, how did Harrow have Amit's power, even though she was in Anushakti, but Steven didn't? How did the gods not know at all what Amit was doing? There's so many, like, questions that I feel like were just very poorly wrapped up there at the end.
No acknowledgement that they were wrong about what Khonshu had mentioned. When Khonshu was trying to bring up the fact that Harrow was trying to actually bring back Amit, no one was like, oh fuck, we were wrong. They were just all like surprised, like they've never heard that before. And I just want to say one thing real quick. The balls on Disney to make the climax of the show, the biggest fight of the show, happen off screen.
Bruh.
What the fuck? What the actual fuck was that, Chris? I do not get it. It made no sense. I get that you're trying to bring up this whole mystery of Jake Lockley. You know what I don't know. I don't like the way that they did this. The big like final fight. It just made no fucking sense. What I did like about that final fight was seeing Mr. Knight kick ass just as much as Moon Knight. That was freaking awesome. But that's basically it for me when it came to that fight.
Well, I gotta say this. I'm not actually that opposed to how they ended the big fight. You know, I'm not that opposed to it. I see what they were trying to do, but like, just to kind of give a little bit of foreshadowing to our conversation about Doctor Strange, where with Doctor Strange 100% feels like a film that was designed for people who have been following the MCU for this long. It's designed for them. It almost feels like Moon Knight in the end was designed for people who weren't going to do the research or aren't comic book fans. We knew Jake Lockley was coming. We knew what Jake Lockley was about. So, I mean, for them to just blank out on probably what would have been the dopest fight in the entire season, you know, that was painful. Like, that hurt. But, I mean, at the same time, like, I think as a creative decision to call back to what we've been seeing for the entirety of the series, I think it was okay. I think it's really the comic book fans that were more pissed off about it than it was the newcomers to the character. We knew Jake was coming. We were hoping to see it there. And then for people who are just now finding the character, they're just kind of like, oh wow, he blacked out again. We don't know what happened. So I think it's okay in that regard, but very frustrating. I can admit it was frustrating as fuck.
It makes sense creatively. It really does. And I think, like I mentioned, it does take some balls to do that. And I think it could work if we get another season of Moon Knight and they finally introduce Jake on screen. That being said, it just leaves kind of an unsatisfying feeling to this first season, or I guess this series. We don't even know if we're going to get more of it. We think we will. But because of that reason, it would have been fucking awesome to finally see him on screen in the very last episode of the season. When they didn't do it, it just felt like, crap, okay, this entire build-up, what was it really for? We did get some really cool moments throughout the series, but, I mean, where's the payoff? Where's that fucking, oh yeah moment? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we got that. I really don't think we got that.
We didn't. We didn't. I don't think we did. I strongly feel like this was meant to be a character story. You know, a character story. And I'd like to think that we are going to get more Moon Knight, but the reflections of the good things we got here. We got a pretty dope, gigantic Egyptian god fight. That was pretty dope, watching Amit and Khonshu go toe-to-toe. We got Layla as the Scarlet Scarab, Egypt's first superhero in the MCU, which is dope. And there is precedent for her character to become what is known as the Scarlet Scarab in the comics. So, again, I will leave that to you to find on your own. But, I feel like there were a couple of moments that were created there for payoff. But just, again, before we start touching on that after credit scene, not enough. Not enough. We don't even get to find out what happens with Layla after the whole situation happens. We just see, Mark return to the asylum. Him and Steven have now joined as one. We get the the Mr. Knight redemption as a character. So for all of the fanboys that were pissed off about Mr. Knight being just kind of like this goofy tertiary character, well, he's kicking ass now. So be happy. Like, he's kicking ass. And also, just like for a note for Steven, it's good to see him, be that brave, be that step up, and have that confidence to just like, hey, we're gonna fuck some shit up today.
Legitimately, I think Stephen Grant is my favorite character of the entire show. And I think my favorite part of this episode was actually seeing Mark and Steven get along so well and having that synergy. We had a point after the fight where they kept talking to each other, and as they switched, the suit switched as well. And I thought the way that they did it so seamlessly was so fucking awesome. And that's definitely one of the biggest perks of this episode, in my opinion.
I agree. And I gotta say this, both the Mr. Knight costume and the Moon Knight costume are like probably top 5 Marvel costumes for me. And I'm not gonna lie, it took a minute for the Moon Knight costume to grow on me. I was used to just kind of like the matte white. When I saw that they were going the kind of mummy route look kind of thing, I was like, oh, okay, that's really on the nose, but I get it. But it took a minute for it to grow on me, and I'm super here for it, man. closing out our Moon Knight section, talking about the after credit scene where we finally get Jake Lockley, and he just to get straight to it, puts a bullet between the eyes of the Harrow Amit combo, and Khonshu basically reveals this whole time this was going to play out the way he wanted it.
Man, he's that fucking Egyptian Palpatine. You know what I'm saying?
Right?
When that post-credit scene started, I really had no idea where they were gonna go. In the back of my mind, I'm like, "Hey, are we actually gonna be seeing some Harrow Dracula action?" Well, no, that died alongside Harrow and Amit.
Don't tempt me. Like, I'm so upset about it, man. Oh my god. I just wanted him to be Doctor Doom, or I wanted him to be Dracula so bad. And they could have switched it. They could have twisted it to anything. Anything. But no. We got just Amit. And then a bullet between her eyes. So, I mean, she's just gone. Which, unfortunately, MCU has fallen into its trappings again of killing off its villains. So here we are. I gotta say this, because honestly, I really don't think the after credit scene leaves too much more to the mind. But I will say this, and again, will be pertaining to our conversation about Doctor Strange as well. I said this to Azu. I feel like, and I hate to say this because it's something that I actually live and breathe for, I feel like the MCU is slowly cascading on itself a little bit.
In what way, if you don't mind me just asking you about that?
I feel like at some point it becomes too much. Like, too much to bear. I think 10 years is an accomplishment. Let's get this out of the way. The MCU is an accomplishment. 10 years plus of filmmaking, all centered along a single idea, set in a single kind of universe, all pertaining to the same subject matter. And, people thought there's no way they could do it. There was absolutely no way they could do it. And they did it. We got all the way to Endgame. Everything was seamless. There were no real story beats that went wrong. There was nothing wrong with certain characters. Everything followed through every movie, short of a few minor things that, as a fan, we've forgiven over the years. But now we've gotten to Moon Knight, and I guess this is a good start into Doctor Strange, and things slowly feel like, to me anyway, that they're kind of starting to unravel a little bit, and things are becoming less and less cohesive.
I think it's all because of the introduction of the multiverse as a concept to the greater MCU. But as we move on to Doctor Strange, I want to wrap our Moon Knight review series with a tiny bow. And I wanted to ask you, what would you rate the first season or the show? We don't know yet. What would you rate it as a whole?
As a whole, I give Moon Knight, let's call it season 1 for now. I give Moon Knight season 1 4 out of 5 goblins. Not a lot of misses. And as a Moon Knight fan from a kid, Moon Knight is the comic that got me back into comics. As a Moon Knight fan since a kid, it gave me a lot of the things that I wanted. And of course there were some misses. I feel like that's been the MCU though. No one can be 100% happy. But I can confidently sit here and say that I will give Moon Knight season 1 4 out of 5 goblins.
That's actually pretty good. And it's interesting hearing it from your perspective as a comic book fan. As someone who had no idea who Moon Knight even was prior to this show, I can confidently say that this was a 4.5 geeks out of 5 geeks.
Wow.
I did call it the best show on Disney Plus when I think during episode 2, episode 3. I think this last episode kind of brought it down. Also, I did watch Loki. I do want to say I think Loki is the best show on Disney Plus.
Oh
just
wow,
my
okay.
opinion. But yeah, man, it was a really good episode and really good show. And I'm excited to. I really hope they come out with a season 2. But yeah, going back to Marvel just kind of cascading on itself now with the MCU. I was saying, I think the introduction of the multiverse has made it so it's getting complicated. A lot of people don't know who these new characters that are being introduced are. When I watched Doctor Strange with Mia, she was excited to see Captain Picard on the screen, not knowing who Charles Xavier was. And she was excited to see Jim from The Office on the screen, not knowing who Reed Richards was. It's getting to the point where I think Azu has said it. It's getting almost as complicated as Kingdom Hearts.
I'm still going to like vehemently disagree with that statement. I can still just go to Disney Plus and watch everything that I need in a sitting. Whereas with Kingdom Hearts, it's going to take me, because I want to do a replay before 4 comes out, it is going to take me.
Can you watch X-Men on Disney Plus?
Until, yes, you can watch X-Men on Disney Plus. It is going to take me until Kingdom Hearts 4 comes out for me to catch up to Kingdom Hearts. Man, listen. Yes, the I will say it out loud. The MCU is broad. It's very, very broad. But if you want to understand the mainline stuff, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is the only thing you have had to watch thus far that required you to watch the Disney Plus shows. Is that going to change eventually? We really don't know. Moon Knight, as far as we can tell, doesn't fit into anything. But I will admit, I can see where it could be a little bit confusing, but I don't think it's that big of a deal.
To you, before we go on a full-blown review for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, is do you think that Doctor Strange was a kind of standalone in terms that it needed that previous knowledge, or do you think it's just the start of the future of the MCU, where everything kind of like works off each other?
I think it's the start, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'd like to believe that at some point we're going to get MCU-based video games, and we're going to get MCU-based like media across other spaces that are easily accessible. Again, when we're talking about like convolution, and we're trying, if we're going to really sit here and compare Kingdom Hearts convolution to the MCU's convolution, I really don't think it's a fair comparison, especially if we're talking about the beginning of Kingdom Hearts. Now, you buy the remixes, you buy both the remixes, you buy Kingdom Hearts 3, you have everything you need to understand Kingdom Hearts at your fingertips. Before the remixes came out, you needed a PlayStation, you needed whatever handheld consoles you needed next-gen consoles. There was an actual large financial barrier between you and Kingdom Hearts' story, unless you wanted to just go online and like do the research. But you know, back then that wasn't that easy. You weren't doing it like you're doing it now.
You have to be
So
back then.
I am doing a live show. um, anyways, it is easier now. It is easier now. I just think the barrier for entry is kind of what sets that conversation. But as we go deeper into this conversation, I am going to stress it one more time, just in case anybody has popped in here. If you have not taken a look to the top left and you have not figured out what's going on, huge spoiler alerts for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness from this point forward. Huge spoilers. If you do not want the movie to be ruined for you, do not stay. Come back later. Let's get into it, sir.
So, I'm not going to give the review score right up front. I think I'm gonna let it percolate a little bit. I'm gonna let it just kind of like simmer. I just want to say that this movie was whelming. I think that's terminology that you had used a little bit earlier when we had talked about this pre-show. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't underwhelming. It was just whelming.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but feel a little bit disappointed after it had finished. But it did have a lot of really cool moments that deserve some merit and deserve some credit as well.
I agree. I think the best way to tackle this right now is probably going to be by, let's say, acts of the movie. Um, and yes, real quick to touch on that, that is definitely the terminology I used. It was I left the theater whelmed. So let's get into the first act of the film here. I'm trying to figure out what where really to begin. We start the movie off. I don't want to do all that. I don't want to like break it down like bit by bit. So let's go all the way up until just after the Carmitage fight. Very breakneck, very fast. I knew that going into it, if you were paying attention to CinemaCon, the first 20 minutes of the movie were going to be a lot of what we saw in the trailers. The Gargantos fight, the wedding scene, all the Carmitage stuff. Well, the Carmitage comes a little bit later, but a lot of, what we see in the trailers, we get in that first 20 minutes. And this is, like I said before, when we were talking about this is a film for people that are going into the MCU and they know what's happening. They sat down to watch this movie because they know what's up. They've been watching this movie, and it's breakneck from the beginning.
It is. I think not just with that initial fight sequence, but also just in the introduction of America Chavez, introduction of the multiverse side of the story, and just it really was breakneck. I didn't think it was too fast though. I don't think it was anything like Moon Knight episode 6. It was quick, but it still gave you enough time to just kind of like take a breath and be like, okay, that just happened. What's about to happen next? So it was really interesting to see how they tackled that, for sure.
Absolutely. And America Chavez, that introduction I think was done very, very well with Defender Strange, seeing where she came from. Loved every bit of it. I loved every bit of it, and I do like America Chavez as a character. Let me get that out of the way. And I love the portrayal. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the actress's name because I know I'm going to butcher it. But she did a fantastic job, and I really do hope to see her in later MCU properties, whether it's on the silver screen or the big screen. But leading past, I think we can get past the wedding scene. There's not a lot to talk about there, but actually, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. There is a first bit of like character development where we start to really ask, is Steven happy with everything that he's got going on? The Sorcerer Supreme, is he happy, and of course he lost the love of his life, but that is really the question here. And happiness seems to be a theme that goes around with all of these characters in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, thinking about like Wong, his happiness is brought into question. America Chavez's basically existence is called into a question, and whether she's satisfied with where she's at. Strange, not just with the whole Sorcerer Supreme and his love life, but also as like with himself as a person. He just hears this commentary from everyone around him talking about what a Doctor Strange is, what a Stephen Strange is, and it seems like it just really gets into his own head about it. So yeah, not just that, but we also get Wanda, her whole thing of happiness. Like the whole shtick of the movie is basically Wanda just not being satisfied with her timeline. So yeah, very, very, very interesting to see how they brought the whole kind of like question of happiness into this. It felt very philosophical, and I really enjoyed it.
Agreed. Real quick, what did you think of the Gargantos fight? A lot of people right now are saying the CGI felt a little bit off. Personally, I was so in love with the fight that if it was off, I didn't really pay too much attention to that. I was, as always with these MCU movies, like just kind of captured by the fact that I'm seeing these fantastic things on the silver screen. Big screen, not silver screen.
I think it was a very rushed fight. But honestly, it was at the very beginning of the movie, so there's not really much of a reason to let it drag on. It felt very Sam Raimi-esque. It gave me the old Spider-Man vibes.
Oh yeah.
That's the action that I saw in those scenes. You know what I'm saying? So it was really cool to get a little bit more of that Sam Raimi action in a superhero movie. That just brought a smile to my eyes. The eye popping out was definitely a shocking moment for the theater. It kind of was like a sign of things to come.
Oh yeah, it definitely was our first moment where it's just kind of like, oh okay, this is where we're going, but like not even like a fraction. Like, oh my god, like,
Jesus.
dude, like, just the sound of the eye popping out. I can't even make this sound like a. Like I can't even make the sound. I remember at our showing, everyone was just like, "Oh, it was great." And I think before we even continue, I think it's worth saying, like, this is a Sam Raimi movie, y'all. Like, this is a Sam Raimi movie. If you are familiar with his work from Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, Drag Me to Hell, we get similar shots. Like, oh my god. If you love Sam Raimi's style of filmmaking, this is for you. It's a Sam Raimi film through and through.
Absolutely. And and that's what made me love the movie so much. Anytime it felt like a Sam Raimi flick, I thought the movie was at its best. Anytime it veered into the family side of things, into the grander MCU side of things, I really do feel like the movie stumbled in that regard. It just, I was mentioning this earlier when we talked about it, it gave me tonal whiplash.
Yeah.
It really did. It felt like this movie was trying to do too much at the same time.
Well, and that's the Disney touch, right? Like, it couldn't be full-on horror all the time. So, I mean, I guess you could say it's on brand, but, I think that's, even going back into Moon Knight, a huge topic of the conversation, it's nice to finally see them break the mold. And I think even with those family moments, this is still something that the film achieves. It definitely breaks the mold in a lot of ways, and it circumvents all of those... Well, not all, but it circumvents a good bit of those MCU tropes and what we've come to understand and receive from Marvel Cinematic Universe films.
I agree. Even to the point where one of the protagonists of one of their biggest Disney Plus shows ends up becoming a fucking villain, a full-blown villain, unabashedly a villain. It was definitely unique. It feels like, starting with Moon Knight, this post Endgame, this post 10 years of the MCU is definitely trying to traverse unfamiliar waters, and that's honestly what gets me the most excited about it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and since you brought it up, let's just go ahead and talk about that villain. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it. I never thought she was a hero of WandaVision either way. It comes to find out that these demons that have been chasing America Chavez were actually sent by Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch herself, and she is revealed as the film's one and only true villain. And boy, hard let me tell you, I'm fine with that. I'm okay with the villainous turn. It's not the first time, but man, and I've said this before in these conversations, I've never seen Wanda post-Endgame as a hero. At all. I believe that she needed to be held accountable for Westview, and she wasn't. She was allowed to just fly off and do her own thing. And I think the impact of that decision by the world of the MCU is on full display here. And honestly, if she ended up getting caught up in that situation where she did get what she was trying to achieve in this film, I think the world would have been deserving of what they received. I don't understand why this is the first time Strange went and visited her. I don't know why the Avengers never intervened. She's technically part of the Sokovia Accord, so the government should have called for her to, surrender.
See, man, I don't get it either. It's definitely the strangest thing, and you can't help but think whether she used some of her magic to kind of like charm certain people to let her just get away with it. At the end of the day, she, at least in this movie, kind of proved herself to be the most powerful character that we've seen in any MCU property. She was fucking terrifying. The mastery of her magic that she has, the amount of wisdom and knowledge that she has, not just that, but also like some sort of righteous anger. She does have a right to be angry with how things have played out in her life, but she leans into it way too heavily. It's honestly terrifying stuff, man. And I really do think the best parts of this movie were when she was on screen, when the whole movie was just about what the fuck is she going to do now? What wall is she about to come out of? Who is she about to kill? Whose neck is she about to snap? It honestly was really freaking cool. But yeah, very strange that no one ever really tried to kind of like restrain her or hold her accountable for that. It just, I wonder if we're gonna get any explanations in any other property.
I mean, if we're gonna be honest here, regardless of everything that I just said, who the hell was gonna do it? Without the Darkhold, she was ridiculously powerful. And maybe there was a time when, you know, Doctor Strange and the might of the Carmitage could have taken down Wanda before she truly became the Scarlet Witch. But where we are presented to her in this film, there's no way. And if anyone out there thinks for a minute that currently, whether she's alive or not, the Scarlet Witch is not the most powerful character in the MCU, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. I think the only person who potentially could have even intervened and done something about that situation was more than likely Khonshu. And that's not happening. And even that is questionable. I think it would take an actual god, not an alien, Thor, to actually take care of Wanda. But continue on the topic of her, in a lot of ways, she is the villain of this film, and even more so, it is her movie. Hats off to Elizabeth Olsen. Absolutely rocked the role. Some of the best acting in the MCU, as far as the film portion goes. Y'all already know how I feel about my boy Oscar Isaac. Best thing that happened to the MCU since RDJ. But absolutely killed the role. Gave such depth and passion and made such an interesting turn as this wounded and distraught mother who was just looking for her children and only wanted her children.
Honestly, I think the way that they personified her as well made her the most relatable villain. Throughout the movie, I'm like, yeah, I could really understand why she feels the way she did. Her exchange with Doctor Strange when she was attacking the temple in order to get America Chavez, that whole exchange is like, damn, they're both fucking right. Like, what she's doing is absolutely wrong, but her convictions are coming from a place of logic, and it's understandable to see why she feels that way. So that just made it even more terrifying because you knew that even though she was doing this terrible stuff, it was coming out of emotions that are just entirely relatable. And towards the end of the movie, when we saw her interact with her sons and they were scared of her, seeing the emotion on Elizabeth Olsen's face, that was the only moment in the movie where I was literally jerked to tears. I was literally just almost crying because you could see the pain and the realization on her face, despite the fact that everyone in the movie was literally telling her that that's exactly what would have happened. Seeing her actually come to terms with that, fantastic performance, man. I truly believe this movie should have been called Scarlet Witch and the Multiverse of Madness.
And it hurts, man, because we're watching a character whose life has been lost. You know, she lost her parents because of in a lot of ways Tony Stark. She lost her brother again, and because of a lot of ways Tony Stark. She was forced to kill her husband, watch him be resurrected, and to have to watch him die again, and went through the trauma of creating her own children to have them taken away. And again, she's at the precipice. She has everything she wants in her grasp, and she has to make the decision to realize that this is not the way it should be. And of course, a lot of this is because she was influenced by the Darkhold, but still, you know, she was aware that whole time and had to make a conscious decision to say, I have to let my children go. Like it,
It's heartbreaking.
her storyline has been so traumatic, and I hurt for Wanda Maximoff in the MCU, but at the same time, getting into her transgressions as the Scarlet Witch, she doesn't exactly deserve a happy ending.
Oh man, dude, like towards the midway point of the movie where Doctor Strange is interacting with Illuminati, introducing Black Bolt, introducing Captain Marvel. I forgot what her character's name, but it was Carol Danvers' superior officer from the
Maria
Captain Marvel
Rambeau.
movie. Right. So we also got Charles Xavier. We got Reed Richards. We got some really cool shit. But you know, we said it. Scarlet Witch, the most powerful fucking character in the MCU. She, oh, Chris, take it away. Take it away.
Oh.
I'm getting a little flustered over here.
First off, we can't forget Captain Carter also makes an appearance.
Right.
We learned that the biggest threat to the multiverse is not Wanda, which in my opinion still is Wanda, but is also Doctor Strange, just because of his inquisitive nature and his need to hold power, or as said previously in the film, hold the knife. His search for power, while he remains a good person, puts him in very precarious situations. And this being the situation that leads him into the Illuminati, essentially we find that in this universe, their Strange had the Darkhold, and they used... he wanted to use it to find a way to defeat Thanos in their universe, and unfortunately that didn't work out, and they ended up having to use the Book of Vishanti, which is its antithesis. So where the Darkhold is good, the Book of Vishanti is... where the Darkhold is bad, the Book of Vishanti is good. And because of this, they ended up killing their Stephen and remembering him as a martyr in their world. But... the Illuminati was standing to judge the our Stephen Strange, right when Wanda makes her presence known in their universe. And boy, does she make her presence known. As soon as we got our cake, some bully that you don't know how he got the invite to your birthday party. You're really not sure why your parents thought you and this bully were friends. He has ripped pages out of your book at school. He has put gum on your back. He has taken your lunch money. Your parents invited him to that party, and just as you got your cake, that bully threw a football right at your cake and destroyed it. Wanda just steps in and eviscerates.
Oh my God.
Absolutely destroys Reed Richards, Black Bolt, Captain Marvel, Captain Carter, and Professor Xavier with one of the coldest "I'ma start this fight" lines in cinematic history. Oh,
Jesus Christ, man! Seeing her basically move or remove Black Bolt's mouth and say, "What mouth?" And then you see just Black Bolt just in terror, trying to find out what the hell to do. He tries to shout, and he just inadvertently shatters his own fucking brain. And not only does that sounds brutal, but seeing it in the freaking movie was even more gruesome somehow. You see the brain just like splatter just a little bit. Dude, that entire fight sequence, that entire sequence period was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in a Marvel movie. And probably the most terrifying thing we ever will see in a Marvel movie. It was crazy.
it was straight up gruesome. I mean, and again, spoilers for Multiverse of Madness if you're popping in. And that's where it ends. I can't tell you anymore. It's in the damn title. Like, well, she looks Reed Richards in the face and says, do your children still have a mother? Yes, they do. Good. Then they'll have someone to take care of them when you're gone. And just begins to absolutely destroy. She removes Black Bolt's mouth, as you said, and makes him blow up his own head which was probably still the most gruesome death in an MCU movie to date, turns Reed Richards into string cheese. And I said this earlier to Azu, for the smartest man in the universe, I'm just going to try to grab you. That's the vibe. The smartest man in the universe should have heard her say that cold-ass line and been like, bet, you do what you got to do. I'm going to go kiss my kids on the forehead and tuck them in, because you a scary bitch. Like, that, fuck that. I'm out of here. Bisects Captain Carter. Splits her in half. Just absolutely splits her in half. Crushes, which I still don't think she's dead, Captain Marvel, and snaps the neck of Professor Xavier. This is a villain, ladies and gentlemen. This is a villain. Like,
not even mentioning that she snapped Charles Xavier's neck inside of a dream, bro.
So, yeah, he's just brain dead. He's alive. Just brain dead.
Fucking insane. Arguably, I think we could both agree on this. That sequence was the best sequence of the entire movie. Possibly top 3, top 5 of the MCU as a whole so far.
Oh, easily. But, you know, I gotta admit, as much as I loved it, why, man? Like, I've said it so many times, I feel like I'm gonna repeat at this point. They introduced us to a world where the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and the Inhumans and presumably many other Marvel characters exist, and they just cut off their leaders and move on. We don't get a hint at the X-Men. We don't even hear the words X-Men uttered. Like, the Fantastic Four hinted at, his children are hinted at, which is a huge deal. Like, the Inhumans, the word the Inhumans was said. Like, they give us, and I think that is inherently, like, the biggest problem with this film for me. Honestly, we can even, in my opinion, I think we can end the conversation after this point, because I feel like what happened there was so impactful that it kind of killed the rest of the movie for me.
I honestly feel like it did go downhill after that. The only thing I would say that was fucking amazing after that was the battle between Strange Supreme and Doctor Strange.
Sinister Strange, actually. Sinister Strange. Sinister Strange. That is actually, yeah.
Thank you for the correction. But that battle where they were like literally fighting with musical notes, and then the music of the movie would correspond to that fight. That's honestly the only thing after that sequence that I thought was like A tier, S tier Marvel.
100%. I completely agree. I honestly forgot about that fight. It was that cool. But I mean, just to give the audience some perspective on, like, even towards that part of the movie, I could have seen this movie twice. I've only seen it 1.5 times. After the Illuminati were killed for the second time, I just left. And I admittedly, I've never gotten up and walked out of a movie. And I didn't, again, walk out of it because I was disappointed or it was distasteful or anything like that. I just walked out because I didn't need to see the rest again. Like,
also, the context needs to be provided as well. You literally watched it the second time 20 minutes after watching it the first time.
I did.
That plays a little bit of role in it as well. You know,
honestly, but that's the thing. Like, we were having the conversation. We said, like, hey, if it's good enough, do you want to go and watch it again? And we both said yes. So mind you, if it were good enough, we were in for the long haul. It didn't matter, really. Like, it's just, and this is where I believe the MCU starts to cascade on itself. And honestly, it goes all the way back to WandaVision. It feels like they're playing with us now. Like, it really starts to feel like they're playing with us in a lot of ways. And it starts with the Mephisto rumor, which is always just funny at this point, but leads all the way up into giving us, I always forget the actor's name, but giving us the Fox's Quicksilver as Ralph Boner in WandaVision. It feels like they're just kind of toying with us to some degree. And it feels like a big middle finger a lot of the times. We all thought Mephisto was coming. All of the pieces for Mephisto being there were there. We didn't get him. We all thought that we were going to get the first true multiversal crossover with Fox's Quicksilver popping in as her brother in WandaVision. We get the actor, and he turns out to be a literal dick joke. And going forward, I think the only time that they've given us what we suspected, which I'm not saying that they should at all, you know, integrity as an artist and as a filmmaker, but the only time that they've given us what we expected was He Who Remains / Kang at the end of Loki. We all thought that is the only place that it could be going, and it went there. So with this, it honestly feels like an even bigger fuck you. We even had big fuck yous in No Way Home with Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock just being there to get sent back. There was literally 2 after credit scenes of him literally just showing up and then going away. That was it. And of course, you know, we got a little bit of the symbiote, but to bring all of these people together and then kill them, to title your movie The Multiverse of Madness, and there's really not a lot of madness, and there's really not a lot of the multiverse, I feel like they're playing with this a little bit, man. Like, I don't know. I feel like they're playing with this a little bit.
I thought this movie was also a little strange with the way that they try to use it as a origin story for America Chavez, but we've gone through this entire review and we've only mentioned her once. That's just a little strange to me. Like, don't you find that a little strange?
I do, and again, I love the character, I love the portrayal, but people are calling her the heart of the film that she makes the movie, and I strongly disagree. I don't. For her to be in almost every other scene, like, for me to say that I feel like she really wasn't even in the movie, like, that's where I sit. And that's just me as an honest creator, as an honest content creator. Like, I'm not trying to, like, rub hands with Marvel in that way. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't feel like the character was really done justice, or at least enough for everyone to sit back and say she was the end-all, be-all of the film.
I think, like you said, what we did get of America Chavez in this movie was good. Was definitely fucking good. Don't get me wrong. I just think that they should have introduced America Chavez before this movie. Make it a series. Make it a limited, make it a one-shot movie. Like, I don't know. Do something. Introduce her before the movie, because it just felt weird. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Just the tonal whiplash from going from a horror movie to a movie about America Chavez. It just felt like such a big disconnect. It also ended up just feeling like a big fuck you to people like you and I, where we enjoyed the Wanda parts of the movie. We enjoyed the horror parts of the movie. It just didn't feel like they wanted to commit to that fully.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's not aware, I feel like we have to bring this up. And honestly, I forgot really up until this point. I should have been talking about it. The movies were released out of sequence, just so we can be clear about something. Multiverse of Madness was supposed to come out before No Way Home. And with that said, America Chavez was supposed to be in No Way Home. This is a confirmed fact. Give me just a second. I'm trying to find the point in this article so I can properly reference this. Sorry.
I believe you had told me that America Chavez was supposed to be bringing the other Spider-Man into the universe, right?
Yes. So, a report from Doctor Strange 2 from The Hollywood Reporter shared details about America Chavez's unrealized role in No Way Home. During No Way Home's development, Chavez was set to play the Sorcerer's Apprentice role required to assist Peter and company in connecting the multiverse and bringing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man into the MCU. Following the MCU release slate shift, which forced Multiverse of Madness to release after No Way Home, writers Eric Summers and Chris McKenna were forced to cut Chavez's Spidey role in order to preserve her MCU introduction into the Doctor Strange sequel. And there is concept art to back up this theory. This is not just out of the blue. This is not some random shit. She was supposed to be the role that Ned essentially ended up being in No Way Home.
Interesting.
And I think it hurts it. I really do think it hurts it. I think had we been introduced to her prior to this, it would have felt more rewarding, her arc in this film. And It's just disappointing. But I mean, it is what it is. But that is what it was supposed to be.
I agree. I completely agree. It was disappointing. But I guess that begs the question: chronologically, where does this fit? Do the events of Multiverse of Madness happen after No Way Home?
Frankly, I'm not
Have
too
we gotten
sure.
any Yeah, I don't think we've gotten any confirmation about that one way or another.
Yeah, no. It usually takes us a little bit of time. I think we found out somewhere along the lines of like episode 4 of Moon Knight that it was thus far the furthest point in the MCU history that we were aware of. But we will find out eventually at some point. But I do want to like start to close this out by saying I am a fan of the MCU. I'm always going to be a fan of the MCU. It has brought a lot of my childhood joy to the big screen and also to the silver screen. But I am worried about it. I'm worried that we've always been left with direction. And so far, the only direction that we've gotten post Multiverse of Madness is that the multiverse now exists and the door is open for us to tell whatever story we want. While I think that's fine, because I like the idea of them approaching these films like they approach the comic books, we just get movies that are inherently tied together with all of these other movies. It does worry me, because having that goal for the first 10 years, get to Thanos, get to Endgame, get the Infinity Saga out of the way, set a very high bar that they were able to reach. And right now we have so much on our plate with no destination. So,
maybe all it's gonna take is just one movie or one show to start to string things together, to just kind of like guide us a little bit. That's all we need, just a little bit of guidance. And I think all these other movies and shows that have come up to this point after Endgame will start making more sense. We have had confirmations that they're already planning the next decade of Marvel.
Yes.
So I think there is a direction. I just think there's also trying to balance that direction with also the much broader nature of the MCU now, with Disney Plus being a thing, with the multiverse being a thing narratively. Very interesting to see where they're going with this. I am a little concerned, but I still have faith in Kevin Feige. I think I want to go ahead and just put my review score down for Doctor Strange. I have been deliberating about this for a while now. It's been a back and forth. I am going to be watching Doctor Strange again tomorrow. Maybe I'll have another score by then, but right now my score is 3.75 geeks out of 5.
3.75 geeks out of 5. Okay. I myself will not be watching Doctor Strange, likely again until we get an at-home release. And having seen it all the times that I really think I need to see it at this point, I do believe I can give a very solid review. For me, I'm going to have to give Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness 3 out of 5 goblins. It just misses the mark with the rather incoherent story, lack of direction, and a lot of hopes left hanging.
I think it's still a solid score. I definitely recommend anyone who's interested in it to go watch it, because it was a fun movie. And
Absolutely.
The movies, and like the scenes that made it good were scenes that are truly fucking great. Like, we're talking about all-time great. So definitely watch it if you haven't watched it. If you watch this and you've seen all these spoilers, I still think it's worth a watch. Absolutely.
I agree, and I think we'll save our conversation for where the MCU is going after this for another episode of Geeks and Goblins, sir.
That's a good plan, man.
Yeah, man. MCU Power Hour. Oh, God. Big things like this have happened. We have Power Hours. Star Wars Power Hour.
Oh, dude, that's
Sony
coming
Power
soon, man.
E3
Ooh,
Power Hour.
Hey, listen. I'm just gonna say, I watched Loki Of course, I had to kind of watch Loki for
Here we
Doctor
go.
Strange. You don't
Here we
have to
go.
watch Bad Batch
Here
for
it
anything.
comes.
Dude, you gotta watch
my
the Bad
God.
Batch, man.
Jesus
You gotta watch the Bad
Christ.
Batch.
Oh my God. It'll happen, I guess. Jesus Christ. Tell me, my friend, when does Kenobi start? The 12th?
May 27th.
May 27th. All right. Well, then we will be doing the exact same thing we did with Moon Knight that we did with Kenobi. We'll be doing our main episode topic on each episode of Kenobi as they come. So sit back and look forward for that. But until then, we are going to be filling your minds, your ears, and your hearts with some fantastic conversations about some very geeky things and some very goblin-y things, some video game things, some comic book things, some things in between. We might actually eventually start throwing some anime in that bitch. You never really know which way it's going to go here on Geeks and Goblins. Utopian Revolt, please tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on my Twitch channel, Utopian Revolt. You can find me on my Twitter, also Utopian Revolt. You can find me on YouTube. Spoiler alert, it's Utopian Revolt. And you can find me on my Discord, on OG Goblins Discord, and you can find me on Saturday nights on Geeks and Goblins.
Fantastic. And I am back with a vengeance, ladies and gentlemen. Gone for a whole week. I will be back, as always, Monday, Wednesday, streaming here on OG Goblin Games, as well as on Saturday, as always, with Geeks and Goblins. We're going to try our best not to give you guys any more, like missed days. Last Saturday, it was a fluke. Don't even worry about it. Didn't even happen. Just bless your hearts and move the fuck on. It's not even that big of a deal. And if you want to come back and catch our thoughts, and your thoughts too, I guess. I don't know. We might share some. If you want to come back and catch our thoughts on Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, Moon Knight episode 5 and 6, you can find this VOD up on Monday, 1 o'clock, just to catch up with us and see what we had to say. Or, you just stay here on Twitch and watch it, like the next hour or so, whenever it gets put up. I don't know. But, go follow us on the YouTube as well. It's Geeks and Goblins. You can find it. It's everybody's favorite show. They just don't know it yet. Just saying.
Fucking little thing, man.
Sir, thank you for joining me on another episode of Geeks and Goblins. I'm going to go take a shot at Henny and go to sleep.
Do it, man. That's for the digestion, and also, it's just a natural sleep aid. You know what I'm saying?
Whatever the kids want to call it nowadays.
Man. Have a good night.
Sure, yeah. Whatever they want to call it. You guys out there in the world, you take it easy. We will see you all on the next episode of Geeks and Goblins. Love you very much. Watch out for witches, and good night.